Hi everyone, I'm Mark and welcome back to the State of the Earth podcast from the Graduate School of Environment and Sustainability. Today, I'm really excited to be welcoming Bri Pickstone, a PhD researcher at the University of Exeter's Environmental Intelligence Centre for Doctoral Training. Her work sits at the cutting edge of remote sensing and biodiversity monitoring, all areas that are increasingly crucial as we further research and respond to the environmental challenges of today. Bri began her academic journey with an MSc in Applied Data Science, where she developed the technical and environmental insights that now fuels her doctoral research. She's supervised by an interdisciplinary team, including experts in remote sensing, ecology, and computer vision. Bri is currently 6 months into her research, with her PhD title being Addressing Ecosystem Mapping Challenges with Remote Sensing and Machine Learning. Her research focuses on how these technologies can support biodiversity net gain assessments, offering new ways to map habitats, derive biodiversity measures, and ultimately make ecological monitoring more transparent and accessible to all stakeholders. Bri is currently working on a vision language model which integrates satellite data with expert ecological knowledge to improve how to classify habitats using the UK Habitat Classification Scheme. In today's episode, we'll be exploring the breadth of Bri's research with regards to the directions, challenges, and outcomes she expects to find along the way. So, whether you're an ecologist, data scientist, or just someone curious about the future of environmental monitoring, there will be something for everybody today in this episode. Bri, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much, Mark. It's great to be here.
So I'll start with your journey to your PhD. So what initially sparked your interest in data science, and how did your master's in applied data science help evolve your focus that you are on now to the environment and sustainability?
So my love of data science actually began in my bachelor's, where I took marine biology and ecology at the University of Queensland. And here I took a subject called biostatistics, and I absolutely loved the way that it was applying data science to solve some biological issues at the time. However, when I was trying to look at different PhDs or even masters in that area, there wasn't a lot that was actually focusing on applying those techniques directly to solve environmental issues. And so when I saw that the University of Exeter had an opportunity to be able to apply different data science techniques to solve environmental and sustainability issues, I knew I had to undertake that master's. And it was a really great year. It was here at the University of Exeter at the Penryn campus. And some of the subjects included tackling sustainability issues with data and models. And this was just a wonderful course that allowed you to take part in different stakeholders where they presented their data challenge. You had about 2 weeks to try and solve it and then bring it back to those stakeholders. This is what we did, and this is how we were able to solve your problem. And that just allowed you to develop techniques of data science so quickly, because you essentially had to work in a team under 2 weeks, try and tackle this issue and then solve it. And I love that type of work. And I love that it changed so rapidly as well. So like every couple of weeks, you had a different problem to solve. And so you had to apply different data techniques, look at different machine learning techniques. And because of that, I had a breadth of different types of skills that I developed within a very short amount of time. That included looking at how you can use machine learning to solve issues that involve remote sensing. It looked at how you can use machine learning to be able to best put different areas of wind turbine under the sea. It looked at even looking at the financial sector. So it was a range of different environmental issues that we were looking at. And in the end, it was just the ability to pick up those skills within a short amount of time that I felt like I could apply it to a variety of different areas. And I think it's just great that how quickly machine learning and data science is kind of becoming as a wonderful tool to be able to solve different environmental issues. And so as soon as this PhD came up, which kind of was the cross section of remote sensing, machine learning, and the environment, I knew that it was something that I wanted to take up.
Yeah, awesome. No, that sounds like a really fantastic course. And like you mentioned, you learned so many skills in such a short span of time. So yeah, that's really good. So moving on to sort of why your research matters, which you have touched upon, but for those who may not know, can you explain what biodiversity net gain is and why it is important for biodiversity monitoring?
Yeah, so the State of Nature report in 2023 in the UK has highlighted there has been a vast decrease in wildlife populations. So currently the global rate of biodiversity loss is about 73% since the 1970s. And in the UK, we're seeing about 1 in 6 species being threatened with extinction. But there's this like driven expansion of anthropogenic activities as well. So within the Sustainable Development Goals, there's a push to continue to advance infrastructure development, but in the same hand, trying to protect biodiversity, which is under SDG 14 and 15. So this kind of has highlighted a challenge that countries across the world are trying to grapple with. And that means there's been this growing movement of adopting biodiversity offsetting policies, aiming to achieve either net gain or no net loss. And in February 2024, the United Kingdom, or specifically England, introduced Biodiversity Net Gain, which essentially means that any new development sites need to show a net gain of biodiversity of at least 10% for a minimum of 30 years following construction. So I guess it's their way, in simple terms, to try and balance biodiversity loss with also the infrastructure development that we see in the UK.
Sort of thinking about obviously remote sensing, some people may or may not be more or less familiar with it, but what is remote sensing and what are the benefits of using it in your research? And within remote sensing itself, what data are you using within your PhD?
Yeah, so I guess specifically looking at biodiversity net gain, to be able to fulfill the requirements of biodiversity net gain, the UK needs adequate ecological resources, including the expertise of ecologists and local planning authorities to assess, plan, and monitor ecological aspects of the development project. And recent surveys have highlighted that this is like a significant resource gap where they potentially won't be able to send an ecologist out to every single site. And this means that not every site will be able to be specifically monitored. So this is where remote sensing could potentially be able to fill this gap. And it's been long expected to be a key component to fulfill global biodiversity monitoring strategies. And this is because it's able to capture information about the physical and biological characteristics of ecosystems at various spatial and temporal scales. And it's been a focus in biodiversity research at global, national, and regional scales. And it's been identified as a potential tool to facilitate some of the more labor-intensive, costly, and time-consuming aspects of biodiversity net gain. So although this has kind of been pushed within the commercial space, where it could potentially help with producing a baseline biodiversity map or to support on-ground ecological surveys, there's not really any evidence at the moment that shows that remote sensing and machine learning could potentially be able to support biodiversity net gain. And so this is kind of where my research comes in to see whether this remote sensing tool could be able to monitor different habitat sites. So there's lots of different remote sensing techniques that can be used. One of the most popular ones that come out that people will probably be most familiar with is, of course, the use of drones. But this costs ecological consultancies quite a lot of money to be able to send out those drones. So we're fortunate enough to also have access to open source remote sensing technology. So this is like Sentinel-2, which is released by the European Space Agency. And then the UK also has National LiDAR, which covers the whole of the UK, which essentially gives you a digital terrain model as well as a digital surface model. Sentinel-2 can provide imagery of that area, and the spectral bands within the Sentinel-2 can help bring out physical characteristics of the different habitats that you're observing.
So thinking about the aims of your research, one is to obviously bridge the gap between the different disciplines that you'll encounter in your research, whether that be ecologists or machine learning specialists. But what challenges do you think you'll face in sort of collaborating all those different disciplines?
Yeah, so my research does really sit within an interdisciplinary field. And so although there's a wealth of knowledge in all the different fields, so you have remote sensing specialists that really understand the technology and the remote sensing platforms, and as well as being able to extract biodiversity information from remote sensing products. And then you have the ecologists who focus on biodiversity monitoring. They really understand the habitats on the ground, and they understand what's happening on an ecological aspect of it. And then you have the machine learning specialists who can increase the information extracted from the remote sensing workflows. They understand, the different approaches that are needed to extract that information. But my research tries to sit in between all of these to be able to synthesize this information well to different stakeholders, as well as being able to create a workflow that can be accessible to a variety of different sectors. So this is means that I will have to understand what the needs and the requirements of ecologists, as well as understanding how to extract the biodiversity information from remote sensing products, as well as being able to use machine learning to be able to extract that information. So this is why it's really important that I'm working with an ecological consultancy throughout my research. So I'm working with an ecological consultancy called RSK Biosensors. And a part of my research is making sure that I engage with the stakeholders and understand what their needs and their challenges are with implementing remote sensing machine learning and exactly what they need in the end. Because there's this gap that can sometimes be that you're producing these difficult machine learning pipelines that can't actually be used by industry. So it's really important that when using these difficult or sometimes complex algorithms, that your end solution can actually be used and it is actually important for the end user. So part of that will mean that I'm going to be doing some surveys and also working with the ecologists on the ground and looking at the whole biodiversity net gain workflow from beginning to end, so I understand exactly what happens at what stage. And that will mean that hopefully I'll be able to understand exactly what the needs are so that the use of remote sensing as well as the use of machine learning is able to be applied within the ecological industry.
So obviously, you're only 6 months actually into your PhD, and you've completely touched on all these different things that, your aims of your research. But if we can think a few years down the line, what kind of like real world impacts are you hoping your PhD will create?
So I've touched on it a little bit about talking about this work that I'm doing with RSK Biosensors and also with the Biodiversity Net Gain, that there's currently the use of remote sensing machine learning within the commercial space. And my hope is that I will be able to develop some remote sensing and machine learning pipelines to be able to help with the workflow of biodiversity net gain. So at the moment, my research is looking at how I can use a vision language model to be able to predict land cover classes. And so this will mean for ecologists, before they go out, they have an understanding of what different land covers are present. What that means at the moment is they have to go onto the ground, they have to look at the area of the land cover, they have to work out the condition of the land cover, they have to work out the distinctiveness and the strategic significance, which all essentially becomes a proxy for that biodiversity, which is fed into biodiversity net gain. So at the moment, with early conversations of RSK, it's hoped that my research can then produce kind of like a prior land cover map for them to use before they go out onto site, or potentially even like an early warning of which land covers or which different habitats are most important for them to go see. So some of the sites that they might need to access will be difficult. So having that information and being able to use remote sensing machine learning will allow them to see that land cover before they go out and even potentially use that information rather than having to send an ecologist out, because some of the land covers that they need to see are really easy to predict using remote sensing machine learning. So you can imagine like a grassland or a cropland, an urban environment is quite easy to be able to see compared to something like heathland and wetland and more difficult terrain. So the hope is that having a pre-classification map will help them to be able to see what they're about to go into and see whether they even need to go onto sites or instead, I guess, focus their efforts onto those that are more difficult to classify using remote sensing and machine learning. On top of that, it is to bring light of exactly where remote sensing and machine learning can fit within the biodiversity net gain space, because with the different commercial products that are coming out, there's not much transparency of exactly how or what remote sensing products are used and exactly what machine learning pipelines are used. What I'm currently working on is creating a piece that kind of highlights where remote sensing fits, exactly how it can fit in, and I guess almost like a practice insight piece to consultancies to be able to say, this is where remote sensing can help with being able to assess habitats, and this is where remote sensing really just can't do it just yet. So there's some parts of biodiversity net gain where ecologists will have to be on site and count how many species there are within a grassland. They'll have to look at how high the sword height of the grasses are. They'll have to go out and look at how tall the trees are, what age the trees are. And some of that, and all of this feeds into the condition assessment. And some of that information, such as the height of trees, can easily be done using remote sensing, but being able to look at 1 to 6 species and the percent cover of the species from remote sensing is just not possible yet. And I think this type of information really needs to be highlighted so that ecological consultancies understand what can and can't be done with remote sensing.
That's fantastic. So if we circle back to the start and you've done, an MSc in applied data science, you're someone who obviously gets data science. And as an environmental scientist, and I think with a lot of people, they can tend to find the topic a little bit anxiety provoking. It's something that, can be really challenging. Is there sort of any advice you would give to people who might find data science a bit challenging at all? Or is it something that you've just worked really hard at?
Yeah, I find it is one of those, even myself, it can be just getting, especially in a field that moves so quickly. So that's something that I'm always conscious about is in the machine learning field. Everyone wants to use it. Everyone wants to apply it to their research. And it can be really difficult to keep up to date with what's going on and how to use it. And I've just found that, really just having a go. And I know that sounds, that sounds quite silly, but I realize sometimes the code looks really challenging, especially when you read it online. But there are so many great different workshops and different free online resources that you can use. And I think going back to that first part about the MSc in applied data science, where we did that module where you kind of just had to take the problem, try it for 2 weeks and had something in the end. And one thing that they really focused on was that it wasn't about the final performance of our models. It wasn't about how well we did it at the end. It was like kind of how we conveyed the information. So we could have had a model that didn't work very well, but it was kind of our thought process of why we got there and why we picked that machine learning technique and what information we could then feed back to the stakeholders. And I thought that was a really good way to put it, is that it's your kind of your mentality of going into the problem. Like, this is something that I'm trying to solve. This could work, but it might not. And it's kind of just a matter of giving it a go and seeing how it works. So I think it's starting small, having a go and trying the different things that are online, because the YouTube videos and all of there's so many different platforms that you can use now. And just typing in, if you're interested in an environmental problem, if you put that in with machine learning, you will find so many different notebooks that can help you with like how you can tackle it. I think that's where you have to start, is just doing something that you're interested in and trying to think about how you could solve it with data and just giving it a go.
That's really good advice and so true. And obviously, you're very early into your PhD journey, and doing a PhD in any field is obviously hugely challenging. And I've just done my dissertation, my undergrad, which is like nothing compared to a PhD, and I found it so challenging. But for people out there who are perhaps thinking of pursuing a PhD post university, whether they've done a master or straight out of undergrad, sort of what advice would you give them, and why would you say to go for it, really?
I think choosing to do a PhD is one that I even myself really struggled with. I'm actually quite a number of years out of my bachelor's and then went back to do my master's later on in life. And I would say it was always something that I felt that I wanted to do even after finishing my bachelor's. It was something that I really just thought that I just loved research. I loved learning. So choosing to do a PhD can be a really challenging decision because it is quite a big commitment. It's almost doing a bachelor's all over again, the number of years, very focused on one topic. And I would say the main advice is making sure that you pick something that you really love, because a lot of the time you're going to be doing it alone. You're the only person that's kind of in the field that you're looking at it very specifically. Yes, you have supervisors that are incredibly helpful and they're in their own fields, but you really are the one leading the research and leading the way of this, different new techniques. So number one is picking a field that you're really interested in. You can see yourself, on those days that are hard, you're like, at least I love this topic. Number two is the supervisory team can make or break your research. And I think really being considerate about who you're working with and how you work with them. I'm really fortunate to have a wonderful supervisory team that are very supportive of my research and are really insightful, and just working with them weekly is, a great place to be. So you can almost think of like it ends up being a full-time job, working almost 9 to 5, sometimes hours beyond that. So that is a really important part too, is who you're working with. And then I think the third one is that sometimes one thing that is difficult is thinking that you're not doing enough within your PhD. But really it comes down to just like every day giving something a go and knowing that the work that you're doing is really difficult sometimes. So if you know that you can't spend a whole day 9 till 5 in the middle of reading and you come out of it with nothing, it feels like you haven't done anything. So I think it's breaking down the day and making sure that you're not spending hours and hours and hours. And sometimes deep work in a PhD is just a couple of hours, only 3 hours, and then you're done, because that's all your brain can take, because it's more work than if you're thinking of a normal 9 till 5 job. It's very rare that you're in that deep of work, really trying to grapple with many different topics and trying to create something new. So I guess also giving yourself grace in that you're not supposed to be outputting something amazing after the end of the day. I think just making sure you are quite good at organizing your time is a big thing with PhD work. And I'm fortunate enough as well being a part of a CDT. So for those of you that are thinking about doing a PhD, you can also do it within Doctoral Training network. So that's why I'm technically a year and a half into my PhD, but the first year is training, and you train alongside other people in the field. So I was in a cohort of 12 different people, and that training helped you with areas of data science. So some of the people that started the environmental intelligence CDT had no background in data science. They were just geographers, or they're just from ecology, or some of them were even just from social science. And the first year is just kind of grappling with data science. And then the second year, you start doing your research. And there's other programs like the GW4 that you're kind of a part of the team. So although you're all doing different research, you have a group that you can reach out to. I found being a part of that PhD also a really helpful part of it. So I guess considering your supervisory team, as well as even considering your supervisory team and taking into account that the Center of Doctoral Training or different doctoral training programs, there's more and more coming out now, are really a nice way to be able to do your research, because you end up not being alone in what can be a lonely space. And the final thing is that within a PhD, one of the greatest things is that you do have complete control over your time. So you can, take a Monday off and work a day, catch up later. So that's a wonderful part about doing a PhD, is the flexibility that you have that you won't get from a 9 till 5. And I found that a big relief after coming from a 9 till 5, is that flexibility within working hours means that you can kind of balance your life a little bit better. And some people do think that a PhD is like continuing working throughout the whole year, but another part of it is that you still do get holidays like any other 9 till 5, and you can take those when you want, which is, another fantastic part of doing a PhD.
No, fantastic. Yeah, it sounds actually, really supportive. And I personally haven't really considered doing a PhD, but it actually sounds like, you've got the support and you've got a great supervisor. So that's really, really good. I think that people who are listening today will find all that advice you gave so, so valuable. So thank you so much for joining me today, Bri. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Mark. Great to be here.
I hope everyone who listened enjoyed, and we'll catch you in the next one.